Welcome to today's Explainer. We're stepping a bit outside the conventional boundaries of science today to examine a really profound, alternative spiritual perspective on modern medicine. Whether you're a medical professional, a philosophy buff, or just super curious about the mysteries of life and death, this Explainer is absolutely going to challenge how you view the human body. We're grounding today's entire exploration in a specific text called The World of Eternal Life, authored by religious leader Ryuho Okawa. Specifically, we're zooming in on Chapter 3, which lays out a striking philosophical warning about brain death and organ transplantation. Now, just to be clear right off the bat, we're objectively exploring the author's claims here. We aren't taking sides, but rather looking at this critique of materialistic modern medicine from a purely spiritual standpoint. And I gotta say, the concepts we're about to unpack are fascinating.
Here's our agenda for today. First, medical versus spiritual death. Second, the body as a vehicle. Third, pain during organ removal. Fourth, spiritual possession and rejection. And fifth, a warning to modern medicine.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, medical versus spiritual death.
So, the author points out what he sees as a massive, fundamental flaw in modern medicine. He calls it the brain-centric theory, or this idea of a new materialism. Basically, the text says that modern science operates on the assumption that human consciousness lives strictly inside the physical brain. Because of this, when brain function completely stops, the medical establishment declares the person dead and treats the physical body purely as a corpse. But the author warns that this materialistic view completely ignores the existence of the soul.
You can really see the stark divide here. Medical death focuses purely on the brain, but spiritual death? That's defined as the exact moment the soul permanently and completely detaches from the physical body. So, according to this text, a medically dead body, someone whose brainwaves have totally flatlined, might actually still house a living, active soul that's simply struggling to detach itself.
Moving right along to Section 2, the body as a vehicle.
To help us wrap our heads around this highly abstract concept, the author uses a really great, relatable metaphor. Think of your physical body like an automobile, and the human soul is the driver of that vehicle. Now, if your car breaks down on the highway and the engine dies, that doesn't mean the driver inside suddenly stopped existing, right? The driver is still very much alive, they're just trapped inside a broken machine. In the case of brain death, the text argues that the driver, the soul, is still fully conscious and aware, even if the car is completely unresponsive to the outside world.
Now, you might be wondering, if the physical brain is dead, how could anyone process feeling or pain? Well, the text introduces this crucial spiritual mechanic known as the silver cord. Think of it as a spiritual tether connecting the physical body to the soul. As long as this cord is intact, which the author claims it often is during brain death, physical sensations transfer directly to the spirit. Basically, the soul is completely locked into the flesh until that cord is permanently severed.
Which brings us to a really intense part of the text. Section 3, pain during organ removal.
Take a look at this quote directly from the source. Because that silver cord transfers sensation, the author claims that if a doctor removes an organ while a patient is quote-unquote brain dead, the person's soul feels excruciating, agonizing pain. From the soul's point of view, they are awake and aware, trapped in this unresponsive body, essentially experiencing the absolute horror of surgery without anesthesia. The text literally describes the spirit writhing in agony and confusion, completely unable to scream or stop the procedure.
And the philosophy goes even deeper than just physical pain. It introduces this wild concept called organ consciousness. The text argues that the human soul isn't just a single dot inside your head. It's a multi-layered, incredibly complex entity. It says every single internal organ, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, possesses its own spiritual consciousness and its own spiritual nucleus. So when a surgeon physically extracts a heart from a donor, they aren't just taking physical tissue. They are literally ripping away a piece of the donor's spiritual entity.
Let's look at the aftermath in Section 4, spiritual possession and rejection. Let's logically trace this step by step. Step 1, the organ is removed, and as we just learned, the donor's spiritual consciousness is still completely tethered to it. Step 2, that organ is surgically implanted into a living recipient. And step 3, this is where things get highly supernatural. Because the donor's soul is tied to the consciousness of that extracted organ, the donor's soul is magnetically drawn to the recipient's body. The text claims this creates a literal state of spiritual possession where two distinct souls are suddenly forced to coexist inside one single physical body.
So, what's the fallout? The crucial takeaway here is that this process creates devastating consequences for everyone involved. For the donor, they suffer an immense handicap entering the afterlife. They're trapped by pain, anger, and the sudden loss of their body parts, meaning they risk becoming an earthbound, resentful spirit. And for the recipient, they experience spirit possession. In fact, the text argues that a lot of medical organ rejections are actually caused by the recipient's soul and the donor's soul spiritually clashing. This disturbance can apparently even manifest as unexplained misfortunes in the recipient's life and family.
And finally, Section 5, Warning to Modern Medicine.
The author points out that Western philosophies and Christianity have often treated the body as mere dust or clay, totally separate from the eternal soul. And that makes it a lot easier for Western medicine to accept organ transplants. But this text firmly rejects that dualism. Instead, it champions a concept known as the inseparability of body and mind. It's the idea that physical matter and the spiritual mind are not distinct. They are fundamentally unified. What happens to the flesh directly impacts the spirit, and vice versa. It completely challenges the everyday assumption that you can just cut up a physical body without inflicting undeniable heavy consequences on the soul.
So I want to leave you with a question to chew on as we wrap up this explainer. We've traced the logic of this spiritual framework right from the moment of brain death all the way to the afterlife. According to this text, ignoring the afterlife in the existence of the soul during transplants causes massive, unnecessary confusion in the spirit world. So if the purely materialistic medical definition of death is fundamentally incomplete, what are the true, unseen costs of extending physical life at the expense of the soul? It's a profound clash between scientific materialism and eternal spiritual existence, and it for sure gives us an entirely new lens through which to view modern medicine. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today, and keep questioning.